Tonight, we explore a kind of hunt that does not need hounds. Only paper, doors, and men who know how to wait. If you're awake right now, you're exactly where you need to be, in the quiet hour when a whisper can feel like a verdict. Some stories begin with a sword. This one begins with a seal. In Paris, in the year 1307, an order of warrior monks, the Knights Templar, will be taken apart by a system built to harvest confessions and to prize loose hidden wealth. The task set before them is impossible in plain terms. Keep an oath of silence about what was placed in safekeeping, while the only path to survival is to speak. Because in their world, words are not air. Words are keys with teeth. And once a seal is broken before witnesses, the wax witness, they call it, the truth inside becomes binding, even if it was dragged out of a man like a nail from wood. A royal decree will turn brothers into fugitives overnight. Inquisitors and scribes will record truth as whatever can be forced onto parchment. Below the city, chambers will make pain into proof, and proof into permission. And between Paris and Avignon, rival clerics, jealous courtiers, port officials, and bankers will be paid to watch doors and watch mouths. Tell us where you're watching from. What time is it for you? Dim your lights if you can. Let the fan hum. Let the blanket settle on your legs, and let the room grow small around you. Now listen. The Temple of Paris is not a church, not quite a fortress, but a square of stone that seems to drink the winter rain. The walls sweat with it. The gutters cough it into the courtyard. The flagstones hold it in shallow black mirrors. On the night the decree begins to breathe, the courtyard smells of wet straw and horse sweat, and the torches spit resin that cracks like tiny bones. There is river fog in the throat of the city, and it rides up the alleys until every breath feels borrowed. Brother Matthew, mail shirt under a wool cloak, fingers raw from the cold, presses his thumb to a wax seal on a ledger pouch hidden inside his tunic. The wax is warm from his skin. It clings when he lifts his thumb away, as if it resents being let go. He can feel the grit of dried parchment dust along the stitch holes, and he imagines each grain as an eye. They call the rule that holds him the oath of silence. If a brother names the hidden cache aloud, its place, its keeper, its mark, he forfeits protection, legal and spiritual, and becomes unclaimed. Unclaimed is not a metaphor. It means no advocate, no altar, no grave that must be honored. It means you can be broken in the dark and no one is required to say your name afterward. Outside the gate, Captain Hughes of the King's Watch rubs his thumb over the edge of the warrant's ribbon. His glove smells of oiled leather in the stable. He tells himself this is order, this is necessary, because he has a wife who coughs at night and a son whose shoes already pinch. If he hesitates, he will be blamed for softness. If he obeys, perhaps the court will finally notice his name. Practical fear is a sharp spur, and it keeps him straight in the saddle. At the gate, a knock lands like a fist on wood. 1, 2, 3, then a pause, the pause of certainty. A guard's lantern swings, painting the stones with a slow orange tide. Open in the king's name. A voice calls, already bored with resistance. Somewhere inside, a bell begins to ring for matins, thin and confused, as if it woke too early. Matthew's mouth fills with the taste of pennies, iron from fear, or iron from the rings on the men who are coming. He thinks, not of heaven, but of the loopholes and rules. A confession taken under pain can still bind you, the confession loop, unless it is formally challenged within 3 days. 3 days is a mercy on paper. In a cell that sweats cold water, 3 days is a cliff. The bolts slide. The gate yawns. And in the gap, he sees parchment, rolled, tied, and sealed, held in a gloved hand like a small, quiet weapon. Rain ticks on helmets. Horses snort steam. A chain shirt whispers as men shift their weight. At dawn, the first names will be read aloud, and the first seals will be broken before witnesses. Before the knock at the gate, there was the ordinary clatter of Paris, carts grinding over stone, apprentices shouting over fish stink, the Seine carrying cold breath under its bridges. The Templars lived inside that noise like a quiet counting house. They lent money to pilgrims and princes, held charters for widows, stored silver that never touched sunlight. A fortress, yes, but also a vault with a chapel attached, where prayer and bookkeeping shared the same ink. On a gray afternoon 2 weeks before the decree, Brother Matthew stands in the temple's archive room where the air tastes of glue and dust. Shelves rise like ribs, and between them hangs the soft rasp of parchment being slid free. He opens the ledger pouch and unrolls a narrow strip of vellum that has been folded so many times it creaks. Ink has a smell, sharp, almost sweet, and the iron gall stains the cuticle of his thumb like a bruise. He writes a single line with careful pressure, as if the quill is a key and the page is a lock, a date, a sum, a mark. This is the ledger curse as the brothers whisper it. The treasure cannot be moved without its entry being written. Missing ink equals missing mercy. A chest shifts in the world only when the page agrees, and the page only agrees when a brother's hand does not tremble. Across the room, Isabeau, daughter of a notary, hired as a copyist because her hand is steady and her eyes do not wander, waits with a stack of blank sheets. Her sleeves smell faintly of onion from the morning kitchen, and she rubs her fingertips together to shake off dried wax flakes. A candle gutters beside her, and the tallow smoke curls into her hair. She tells herself she is only here to copy prayers and receipts, not to touch the edges of kings. But she has watched men with soft hands become important simply by holding other men's secrets. If she can be useful, she can eat through winter without begging her uncle. If she is useless, the city will swallow her name. Matthew does not look up when he speaks. "Do not repeat what you see," he says, voice low enough that the words barely disturb the dust. Not to a priest, not to a lover, not to yourself in the dark. The oath of silence is not only about treasure, it is about the map that points to it, the ledger that names it, the keeper who can unlock it. He does not say the cache's true name, no brother does. Names, here, are like sparks, too close and everything catches. Isabeau nods, though her throat tightens. She has heard of oaths in churches. This one feels like a rope, and she can already imagine the burn on skin. That evening, a porter brings a parcel from a banker, sealed with blue wax and pressed hard enough to leave sharp ridges. Matthew takes it without comment and sets it on a table where the wood is scarred by decades of knives. The seal is a wax witness. If it is snapped in front of the right eyes, whatever lies inside becomes binding, even if it was written in fear. He runs a thumbnail along the edge, feeling for weakness, and for a moment he wishes the brothers had chosen a different magic, one that did not make paperwork holy. Across the river, in a low tavern near the docks, sailors warm their hands around cups that smell of sour wine. A ship captain speaks of coin that disappears into the temple and never returns, and a port official listens with a practiced stillness. He owes money to a courtier. He needs a new coat. He needs, above all, to be seen as loyal when loyalty is being counted like taxes. Rumor is a kind of smoke in Paris. It finds cracks, it stains ceilings, it makes everyone cough. Later that day, in the king's chancery near the Louvre, a clerk warms his hands over a brazier and reads a list of debts. The parchment edges curl from the heat, and soot drifts onto the ink like black snow. The names of noble houses line the page, owed sums, delayed payments, loans that have become humiliations. He thinks of his own narrow bed in a rented room, of how a patron's favor could lift him, and of how a scapegoat could be made with the right seal. Someone must pay. He murmurs, not as prayer, but as arithmetic. And he is afraid, quietly, practically, of being the one chosen to pay if he cannot offer the court a clean target. When the council bell rings that night, wax is melted, ribbons are cut to length, and a warrant is drafted that will travel faster than mercy. In the temple's archive, Matthew folds the vellum strip and presses the pouch closed until the wax bites his thumb. Outside, Paris keeps breathing, unaware that the king has begun to choose which breaths will count. By morning, a messenger will ride from the palace with a sealed roll that no one is allowed to refuse. The decree does not arrive with trumpets. It arrives folded, tied, and carried under a cloak as if it is ashamed of itself. In the pre-dawn chill, messengers ride through Paris with their horses' hooves wrapped in cloth to soften the sound on stone. Fog beads on their lashes. Breath steams through wool scarves. The city's dogs lift their heads, then settle again, trusting the darkness. Captain Hughes meets the messenger in a side street where the gutters run with yesterday's rain. The warrant is sealed with green wax, the king's mark pressed, so deep the edges look sharp enough to cut. Hughes holds it close to the lantern and watches the wax shine like wet bone. He should be proud. This is a commission, a sign that someone above has noticed him. Instead, he feels the old fear of being used and discarded, the fear that power loves a man only while he is obedient. He thinks of his wife's cough, of his son's pinched toes, and he chooses obedience because it is the only coin he has. By the time the sky pales to the color of dirty linen, the watch is gathered at the temple's gate. Chains clink softly as men adjust them. Steel rings whisper against padded gambesons. A priest from the bishop's court stands with a small leather book, ready to lend God to the paperwork. Hughes reads the decree by lantern light, lips moving. Arrest all brothers of the temple in the realm. Seize their goods. Hold them for questioning in the name of faith. The words are dry on the tongue, but they make the air feel heavy. Inside the fortress, Brother Matthew hears boots before he hears voices. The sound travels through stone, thud, scrape, thud, like a heartbeat that does not belong to him. He wakes on a straw pallet that smells of mice and old sweat, and the cold floor bites the soles of his feet when he stands. He presses his palm to the ledger pouch beneath his shirt. Wax, warmed again, sticks to his skin. He thinks of the confession loop. 3 days to challenge a confession that will be demanded before noon. 3 days, and he is already losing hours. The bolts slide. The gate yawns. Hughes steps in first, shoulders squared, trying to look like a man who believes in what he is doing. Behind him, scribes with ink-stained nails carry boards for writing, and inquisitors carry nothing visible at all, only patience. A brother protests, voice cracking. Another brother reaches for a rosary. A third, older one simply closes his eyes, as if listening for a rule that might save them. In the chapel, candles burn low, their smoke mixing with incense and the sharp stink of wet wool. The priest opens his book and begins to read accusations in a voice meant to sound calm. Idolatry, obscene rites, spitting on the cross. Hughes watches faces, some furious, some blank, some frightened, and he tells himself it is not his job to decide what is true. His job is to deliver bodies where truth can be written. Outside, keys jangle like a small harsh choir. Jailer Perrin arrives with a ring of iron that has begun to sweat rust. It leaves orange dust on his thumb. He has been told the temple will be emptied into his cells, and his first thought is not piety, but space. If he packs them too tight, disease will bloom and the blame will land on him. If he keeps them comfortable, the court will accuse him of mercy. So he looks for a third path: bribes, favors, little bargains traded in the dark, survival disguised as duty. Matthew keeps his hands visible. He feels rope fibers bite his wrists as they are bound, rough as dried nettles. When his mouth opens, he speaks only the words aloud. I am a brother of the temple. I have obeyed the rule. He does not name the cash. He does not name the marks in the ledger. He swallows the secret like a stone and lets it sit in his belly. As they are marched out, Paris begins to wake in earnest. Market women pause with baskets on their hips. Children run alongside, counting the prisoners like a game. From an upper window, a courtier's servant watches and smiles thinly, already thinking of seized rooms and sold plate. The city's noise rises, but inside Matthew's head there is only the dry snap of wax seals being prepared. By noon, the first interrogation tables will be set, and the first seals will be broken before witnesses. They move the brothers through corridors that smell of damp stone and old urine, down steps worn hollow by centuries of feet. Torch smoke stings the eyes. Chains scrape the walls. In the prison yard, crows hop along the rim of a well and watch as if they have been invited. In a chamber above the cells, a long table has been set with the tools of sanctified damage. Quills are sharpened. Sand is laid in bowls to dry ink. A stack of parchment waits like clean linen waiting for blood. On one end of the table sits an inquisitor, Brother Guillaume, his robe smelling faintly of candle wax and smoke from last night's fire. He is not young, and his eyes have the tired shine of a man who has watched too many truths become paperwork. He tells himself he serves the church, but he also knows he serves the king's appetite. He fears disorder more than he fears sin. Fear of riots, fear of famine, fear of being blamed when the streets turn. Isabeau is seated at the other end with a writing board across her knees. Her fingers are already stained. The ink has crawled into the small cracks around her nails. A wax taper burns beside her, its heat softening a seal on a folded accusation sheet. When she presses her thumb to steady the page, the wax gives slightly, warm as skin. She remembers Matthew's warning, not to repeat what you see. Yet here she is, paid to repeat what she hears. Guillaume begins with prayer. Then he begins with rules. The confession will be taken, he says, voice even. It will be sealed. It will be witnessed. And it will stand, unless it is challenged in 3 days. The confession loop is spoken aloud like a blessing. Isabeau hears the trap in it. The days belong to the jailers, not to the men in chains. A brother is brought in, young, shaking, wrists red where the rope has bitten. He smells of straw and sweat and fear. Guillaume asks questions that are shaped like accusations. Did you deny Christ? Did you worship an idol? Did you spit on the cross? Each question is a door with only one handle. The young brother's mouth opens and closes, and his tongue makes a wet clicking sound. He looks at the floor, at his own feet, as if the stones might answer for him. Isabeau writes what is said, because her job is to make sound into ink. But she can feel the weight of her own pen, how it can become a blade without ever being lifted. When the brother denies, Guillaume nods once. A guard steps forward and places a small wooden wedge on the table. Just wood, just a tool. But the guard's hands are scarred, and his motive is plain in the tightness of his jaw. Do this well, keep your post. He does not want to be the man who failed to obtain truth. He wants to go home, to sleep, to not be noticed. Bring him below, Guillaume says. Later, they bring the brother back up. His face is pale, his lips are split, his voice is thin as torn cloth. Isabeau hears the change before she sees it. The way pain teaches a man to speak the words that end pain. Yes, he says, barely louder than the candle's hiss. Yes, I denied. Yes, I spat. Guillaume nods again, as if satisfied by the shape of the sentence. Now comes the wax witness. The confession is written, folded, and sealed with hot red wax. The wax smells like resin and smoke. It strings between fingers when it is lifted away. 2 witnesses, clerks with blank eyes, watch the seal cool, watch it harden, watch the mark press deep. Once broken before witnesses, the truth inside will become binding even if it was forced. Isabeau's stomach tightens at the thought that wax can sanctify cruelty. When the young brother is dragged away, Isabeau catches Guillaume's gaze for a brief moment. In his eyes is not triumph, but calculation. He is thinking of the Grand Master, of the Order's wealth, of the King's impatience. He is thinking of how many seals must be made before the story is complete. Down in the cells, Matthew listens to footsteps and hears the rhythm of a machine. He presses his thumb to his own hidden seal until the wax warms again. If a confession is taken from him, he will have 3 days to challenge it, 3 days to find a counter-witness, to put another seal on the record. In the dark, someone coughs, wet and deep. On the table upstairs, a fresh sheet of parchment is laid out, and Guillaume asks for the next prisoner by name. The stairs down to the torture room are slick with moisture. A torch carried too close leaves soot on the ceiling like fingerprints. The air changes as you descend, cool stone giving way to a metallic tang, the smell of old water that has been boiled and boiled again. Somewhere below, a chain sways and taps once, twice, a patient metronome. Matthew is taken in at dawn. His wrists are bound so tightly the rope fibers feel like they are chewing him. A guard pushes him forward, and his bare feet slide on stone that sweats cold. In the corner, an iron brazier glows. The coals breathe orange. Heat shimmers like a thin veil. A bucket of rinse water sits beside it, and the surface trembles with each step, reflecting the torchlight in broken pieces. When Renaud lifts the lid, steam rises and smells faintly of rust. The man in charge is not an inquisitor. He is a smith named Renaud, hired because he understands what bodies can bear before they break. His apron smells of burnt hair and old grease. He does not enjoy this. No one who lasts in the trade can afford to enjoy it. But he tells himself he must feed his daughters. If he refuses, the court will find another smith, and Renaud's family will starve with clean hands. So he chooses dirty hands and living children. Practical love can be its own kind of sentence. Brother Guillaume stands at the top of the stairs, looking down as if from a pulpit. He does not touch the tools. His power is in permission. Speak, Guillaume says, calm as a clerk. Confess, and you may keep your soul intact. Matthew lifts his head. His mouth is dry, his tongue sticks to his teeth. He tastes ash and the iron of his own blood where he has bitten his cheek. He thinks of the oath of silence and its penalty, unclaimed. He thinks of the ledger strip folded against his ribs, the ink marks that make treasure movable and mercy possible. If he names the cash, he becomes unclaimed. If he does not, he becomes a problem to be solved. Renaud brings forward a simple device, a wooden frame, a crank, ropes that look too new. The wood is smooth where many hands have rubbed it. It smells faintly of pine resin. As the crank turns, the ropes tighten, and Matthew feels his shoulders stretch until pain becomes a white sound behind his ears. He inhales, and the air is hot and dusty, scraping his throat. Somewhere above, a scribe's quill scratches, ink making a record of a man coming apart. Guillaume asks the same questions as before, but now each question arrives with a pull. Did you deny Christ? Did you worship an idol? Did you spit on the cross? Matthew's mind wants to bargain. He could give them the easy lies, small sins that satisfy the page, while keeping the real secret buried. But the wax witness will make any sealed confession binding, and once a lie is sealed, it becomes a law you must live under. Rules do not care whether you meant them. He answers only with the permitted truth. I have obeyed the rule. His voice breaks on the last word. Renaud's eyes flicker, pity, impatience, fear. Then his hands tighten again on the crank because pity does not pay. Above, a clerk leans toward Guillaume and murmurs about money. The king's men are already inventorying property, horses, chalices, linens, silver. But they want more than objects. They want the hidden entries, the caches that do not show on common lists. They want the place where the ledger points when no one is looking. Rumor travels fast through stone. Even here, in the dark, Matthew can hear it like a rat in the walls. When he finally collapses, Renaud loosens the ropes with a sharp jerk, and Matthew's arms drop heavy as wet cloth. He is dragged back to his cell, leaving a smear of blood on the threshold that dries almost black. Guillaume watches the smear and thinks, not of holiness, but of schedules. There are many prisoners, and the king's patience is short. In 3 days, the first confessions will be sealed for court, and Guillaume intends to have Matthew's seal ready to break. While Paris tightens its ropes, Avignon sweats. The Rhone moves slow and brown beneath the bridges, and heat sits on the city like a heavy hand, even when the sun has gone. In the papal palace, corridors smell of beeswax and incense, but also of damp wool hung to dry in shadowed rooms. Feet move softly on tiled floors, whispers slide along stone. Every message arrives wrapped in ceremony. Even the lamps seem careful, their oil burning low to keep smoke from staining the painted saints. Pope Clement sits at a desk that is too large for comfort. His fingers are ink-stained in the way of a man who signs more than he prays. A bowl of water sits nearby to cool sealing wax. When a secretary dips his thumb in it, droplets cling like tiny crystals. Clement's motive is practical and miserable. Keep the church whole. France is powerful. The king is impatient. If Clement fights too hard, he risks a fracture he cannot mend. If he yields, he risks his own soul being remembered as a servant. In the quiet between those fears, he tries to breathe and finds only the taste of candle smoke. His secretary, Father Arnaud, lays out correspondence in neat stacks. Parchment edges rasp against one another like dry leaves. Arnaud has copied bulls, indulgences, condemnations. His hand has made kingdoms move without lifting a sword. He wants to rise. He wants to be trusted. Yet he also fears being the man who carries a decision that kills an order. He dips his quill, taps it once, and watches a drop of ink fall onto the blotter like a small bruise. Then he wipes it away, as if mistakes can be erased without consequence. In the margin of his mind, he counts. How many pages does it take to bury a life? A courier from Paris arrives with dust in the creases of his boots and river mist still clinging to his cloak. He kneels, produces a sealed roll, and holds it up with both hands as if presenting a relic. The king's seal is unbroken. A wax witness waits. Once Clement snaps that seal in front of cardinals, The words inside will become binding in a new way, binding not only in law, but in rumor. Even if he doubts the charges, the act of opening will announce that he takes them seriously. Clement listens as the courier speaks. Arrests, confessions, accusations of heresy, and, always under the surface, the same hunger. Where is the wealth? Where is the ledger that makes treasure movable and mercy purchasable? The king asks for papal cooperation, papal authority, papal blessing on what has already begun. In the antechamber, a banker from Lombardy waits with a satchel that smells of coin, cold metal, and leather. He has come to ask about payments, about indulgence revenues, about debts the palace cannot ignore. He is told to wait. Everyone waits in Avignon. Waiting is the palace's true architecture. The banker's motive is simple. If the Templars fall, who holds the notes, who honors the deposits, who collects the interest? Money hates uncertainty the way lungs hate smoke. In a side chapel, rival clerics gather like knives in velvet. Some resent the Templars' exemptions, their independence, the way they have stood between bishops and money. Others fear that if an order can be undone this swiftly, no vow is safe. Cardinal Bertrand murmurs that the Church must appear decisive, because appearances keep pilgrims obedient. He worries, privately, that if the king proves he can command confession by pain, the next target might be a cardinal with inconvenient property. Fear makes even holy men calculate. A monk leans close to Arnaud and murmurs, "If we do not control the record, the king will write it for us." Arnaud's throat tightens. Control of the record is control of reality. The confession loop, the oath of silence, the wax witness. These are spells made of procedure, and France is already chanting. Clement rises and walks to a window. Outside, Avignon's streets are quiet, but he can imagine Paris, torches, rope, ink. He presses his palm to the cool stone sill, feeling grit under his skin. The Church has rules for confession, rules for accusation, rules for mercy. But the king's hunt is not waiting for rules. It is using rules like weapons. At last, Clement turns back to the desk. "Bring the cardinals," he says softly. "Prepare a commission." Arnaud reaches for the seal knife, its blade thin and bright. He hesitates for a heartbeat, thinking of how a single cut can make a document true. Then he calls for witnesses and begins to melt wax, watching it pool and shine like fresh blood. By tomorrow, the king's letter will be opened in full council, and the first papal orders will ride north. In prison, time is measured by sounds. Keys, footsteps, the drip of water somewhere behind the wall. The straw beneath Matthew's cheek is damp and smells of mold. When he shifts, small insects scatter like seeds. His shoulders ache with a deep, slow burn that does not stop when he closes his eyes. On the second day after the first torture, Isabeau is sent down to the lower corridor with a bundle of fresh sheets. She walks carefully. The stones are slick, and her skirt brushes the wall, coming away darker with moisture. A guard escorts her, bored, chewing on a piece of dried apple that smells faintly of vinegar. She tells herself she is only delivering paper. But the paper is a net, and she is helping to cast it. At the cell door, she hears Matthew before she sees him. A breath dragged through pain, then a small, controlled exhale. When the door opens, the smell hits first. Damp straw, sweat, the metallic edge of old blood. Matthew's eyes lift to hers. He does not beg. He does not accuse. He simply watches, as if measuring whether she might be a tool. 3 days, he whispers, voice rough. The confession loop gives me 3 days if they seal a lie. His fingers, when he raises them, tremble. The rope has left raw grooves at his wrists. "I need a counter-witness," he says, and the words are dangerous because they imply resistance. "If a notary registers my challenge, the seal can be contested." He cannot name the cash. He cannot name the ledger's marks. But he can name a procedure, and procedure is the only language the machine respects. Isabeau's mouth goes dry. Helping him could make her unclaimed in the court's eyes, unprotected, blamed, erased. Not by oath, but by politics. Yet she remembers the young brother's broken voice, remembers how wax cooled like judgment. Her motive is not romance. It is shame, and the desire to not become the kind of person who writes cruelty neatly and calls it duty. That night, in the prison kitchen, a woman named Margot scrapes a pot, with a wooden spoon. The stew smells of cabbage and salt. The steam fogs the small window. Margot's hands are red from lye and hot water. She has heard the guards joke about holy heretics and secret gold, and she has watched prisoners carried past with faces like old paper. Her motive is practical too. If Paris turns against the Templars, riots may follow, and kitchens are the first places looted. She wants calm in the streets. She wants her son to walk home safely. So when Isabeau slips her a small coin, barely enough for bread, Margot nods once, as if agreeing to a recipe. Margot brings a crust of bread to Matthew's cell the next morning. Inside the crust, pressed flat and wrapped in greasy cloth, is a sliver of parchment and a stub of charcoal. Matthew's fingers shake as he writes, because the ledger curse makes his hand remember how ink binds the world. He writes not the secret of treasure, but the challenge to confession, a request for a notary, a claim of coercion, a plea for witnesses. The charcoal smears, he blows gently, and black dust coats his lips. Isabeau takes the sliver when the guard looks away. Her palm sweats around it, and she can feel the paper soften from warmth. She carries it out as if it is nothing, just a scrap, just dirt, while her heart knocks at her ribs like a prisoner. To register a counter-witness, she needs a messenger. She finds one in the outer yard, a boy named Luke, skinny as a reed, hired to run errands for guards. His motive is hunger. He will do almost anything for a piece of sausage and the promise that no one will hit him. Isabeau presses the parchment into his hand and tells him one rule: do not read it. Do not speak it. Deliver it sealed. She melts a bead of wax from a kitchen taper, presses it with her thumbnail, and makes the smallest wax witness she can. Luke runs into the city with the paper hidden under his cap. The streets smell of wet wool and horse droppings. He dodges carts, slips between shouting men, and nearly reaches the notary's door, when a royal sergeant steps from a shadowed archway and catches him by the collar. The parchment crinkles. The wax seal cracks with a sound like a tiny bone snapping. And as Luke is dragged away, the 3-day clock keeps moving, patient as dripping water. On the 3rd day, Paris feels sharper. The air is colder, the sky lower, the city's breath a constant gray ribbon. In the prison corridor, water drips from a cracked stone seam into a shallow bowl with a slow, insulting patience. Each drip is a second spent. Luke does not return. Instead, a guard tosses Isabeau a torn scrap of parchment, Luke's cap, ripped, and a smear of wax on the cloth like dried blood. Isabeau's stomach turns. The wax witness has been broken without witnesses who would help them. Broken in the wrong place, before the wrong eyes, it becomes evidence against them. Captain Hughes is told about the messenger. He stands in the yard with his cloak pulled tight, watching prisoners shuffle like shadows. His motive is a bruise under the skin. He cannot afford scandal. If word reaches the palace that messages are slipping out, he will be blamed, demoted, replaced. So he orders Luke questioned hard. Not because he hates the boy, but because he fears his own fragile security more than he fears a child's pain. Fear makes men cruel with clean reasons. Isabeau, desperate now, goes to the only door she can still try, the notary's. She walks through streets that smell of tallow and damp wool. Her shoes splash through shallow puddles that hold reflections of gray buildings. At the notary's threshold, the wood is worn smooth where many hands have knocked. Inside, the room smells of ink, wax, and old books, comforting, almost, if you ignore what ink can do. Master Etienne, the notary, looks up from his desk with tired eyes. He has survived by being useful to everyone and loyal to no one. His motive is survival through balance. Anger the king, lose his office. Anger the church, lose his soul. Anger both, lose his head. He listens to Isabeau's hurried words, watches her hands shake as she lays down a petition, freshly written, carefully worded, no secret names, only procedure. The paper is warm from her body. It smells faintly of kitchen smoke. I can register a challenge, Etienne says slowly. But I must have a seal intact, and I must have witnesses who will swear the petition existed before the confession was sealed. He points to a shelf where blank wax cakes sit like small red stones. Otherwise, he adds, the confession loop closes and the record stands. Isabeau swallows. Luke's seal is broken. Matthew's petition was exposed. The loop is almost shut. Then we make a new witness, she whispers. And here's how dangerous she sounds. That evening, Margot the kitchen woman smuggles Isabeau into a side pantry where spices are kept in clay jars. The air is thick with pepper and dried herbs. Margot's motive remains the same: keep the streets calm, but now she also fears the guards' anger. If she is caught, she will lose her place, and her son will starve. Still, she lights a stub candle and melts wax in a spoon over the flame, watching it bead and shine. Isabeau presses the petition closed and stamps it with a borrowed ring. Etienne's mark, taken for a moment while he pretends not to see. The wax cools fast in the cold pantry air, hardening into a small, perfect dome. Now comes the hard part: witnesses. Not noble witnesses, those are bought. Small witnesses. A washerwoman who hates the guards, a stable boy who owes Margot bread, a priest's servant who is tired of carrying lies. They stand shoulder to shoulder, smelling of soap, hay, and sweat, and they watch Isabeau hold up the sealed petition. She does not break it. She only declares, "This exists. This was made before midnight." Their eyes are the only shield she has. At dawn, Etienne enters the prison administrative hall with the petition in his satchel. His hands are steady, his mouth is tight. He registers the challenge in the margin of the day's ledger, ink scratching like a small animal. It is not victory. It is only a wedge in a door. Guillaume hears about the registration and feels irritation burn behind his calm face. He has schedules, quotas, expectations. A challenged confession is a nuisance. Yet the rules are rules, and he has built his power by honoring them when it suits him. He orders the petition brought to the table. He orders witnesses summoned. And he orders, quietly, that Matthew be prepared for another session, because the simplest way to end a challenge is to obtain a cleaner confession. In the corridor below, chains are lifted from hooks. A bucket of rinse water is filled until it trembles. And upstairs, on the table, Etienne's seal waits to be tested by hands that do not believe in mercy. When a system cannot get what it wants from one mouth, it finds another. Paris is full of mouths. Cells are full of men who have not slept, who have breathed mold and fear until their thoughts feel soft. The machine learns quickly which questions to ask and where to press. A brother named Alain is brought into Guillaume's chamber on the fourth day. He is older than Matthew, thinner, with a beard that has begun to knot from neglect. His hands shake when he lifts them, and the chains on his wrists make a sound like small bells. He smells of damp straw and sour sweat. Alain has heard screams through the walls. He has watched two men carried out who did not come back. His motive is plain and human. He wants to live long enough to see spring, even if spring is only a memory. Guillaume offers him water in a wooden cup. It smells faintly of ash from the kitchen fire. "Tell us where it is," Guillaume says softly, as if asking for directions to a church. "The hidden store, the cache, the place your rule hides from lawful eyes." Alain's lips part. The oath of silence tightens around him like a cord. If he names the cache aloud, he becomes unclaimed. No protection, no advocate, no mercy demanded by anyone. But the cord has already made him feel unclaimed in practice. Beaten, starved, forgotten. He thinks, in the dark corners of his mind, that perhaps the oath is already broken by what has been done to them. Perhaps God will understand bargains made under stone. Isabeau sits behind her board and feels her stomach knot. She watches Alain's throat work as he swallows. A bead of sweat rolls down his temple, catching torchlight. The room is quiet enough that she can hear the scratch of a rat behind the wainscoting. Alain speaks. Not the true name. The brothers do not speak true names, but a description, a hint, a set of marks. "Under the old well," he murmurs, "where the stone has a star." The words taste like betrayal in the air. Guillaume's eyes sharpen. A scribe leans in, eager, and writes fast, ink spattering. The ledger curse flickers behind it. If the treasure is moved, it must be entered. If the entry is found, the treasure can be hunted. Guillaume signals, and the confession is written, folded, and sealed. Hot wax pools, smells of resin, then hardens. The wax witness is made. Alain watches the seal cool and realizes what he has done. His face goes slack, as if he has stepped out of himself. He is unclaimed now, not by the court, but by the rule that once held him. He whispers a prayer that sounds like an apology no one asked for. That afternoon, The king's agents go to the temple's courtyard with picks and lanterns. They smell the wet earth, the iron of tools, the cold breath of the well. The torchlight makes the puddles shine like black glass. Captain Hughes stands nearby, trying to look calm while his men dig. His motive has shifted, now it is ambition. If he finds something, anything, he will be the man who delivered proof. He will be safe. He will be rewarded. He tells himself the brothers deserve it, because believing that makes the digging easier. They find stones. They find mud. They find old coins dropped by careless hands and a rusted key that opens nothing. No star. No chest. The only thing they uncover is how much a hint can cost. Back in the prison, Alan is taken away now to a smaller cell. No one speaks to him. Even the guards avoid his eyes, as if betrayal is contagious. In the night, he weeps quietly, and the sound is swallowed by stone. Guillaume receives a new decree before dawn. Fresh parchment, crisp edges, the king's seal impressed deep. Seize more property. Press harder. Make the story complete. He runs his thumb over the wax and feels the ridge like a promise. Somewhere above the city, church bells begin to ring, and Guillaume schedules the next interrogation as if scheduling a meal. Tomorrow, the Grand Master's name will be called, and a seal will be prepared for the man who once commanded them all. The city loves a spectacle, even when it pretends to hate it. On the day the first public hearings begin, Paris smells of tallow candles and damp cloaks pressed too close together. People gather outside the bishop's hall, boots sinking into soft mud, breath rising in pale clouds. Vendors sell hot chestnuts. The smoke curls around prayers and gossip alike. Among the crowd stands a washerwoman with raw hands wrapped in cloth. Her motive is simple curiosity mixed with resentment. The Templars have seemed untouchable, and untouchable men make ordinary lives feel small. She tells herself she wants justice, but what she wants, really, is to see the mighty flinch. When the doors open and a shout spills out, she leans forward as if warmth might come with it. Inside, the hall is a long stone throat lit by narrow windows. A dais has been set with chairs for judges and clerics, and beneath it a table waits for documents like a butcher's block waits for meat. Parchment stacks sit in neat piles. Seals shine. Every confession is a small object now, portable, tradable, undeniable once opened. Father Pierre, a parish priest called to speak to the crowd, warms his hands near a brazier. The coals smell of resin and old oak. His motive is fear of unrest. If the people doubt the church's authority, they will doubt his, and then hunger will not be the only thing that riots. So he rehearses the words he has been given. Heresy, corruption, secret rites. He does not know what is true. He knows what will keep his parish quiet. When the first confession is brought forth, two witnesses step forward. They hold the folded page as if it is fragile, though the paper is strong. A clerk takes a small knife and slides it under the wax. The seal cracks with a sharp, clean snap, like a twig broken for kindling. The wax witness is fulfilled. Whatever is inside is now the truth that can be spoken aloud without punishment, because the punishment has already been applied to the prisoner who produced it. A confession is read. A brother admitted to spitting on the cross. A brother admitted to kissing obscene places. The crowd murmurs, horrified and thrilled, because scandal is a kind of warmth in winter. Isabeau sits at the side with her board and feels sick. She recognizes the handwriting of her own notes in the copied confession. Her ink has become a weapon held by strangers. Matthew is brought in later, shoulders stiff, face pale. His wrists are chained, and when he moves, the iron rings scrape with a sound that makes teeth ache. He smells of cold stone and the sourness of unwashed cloth. Guillaume watches him with calm eyes. Here, in public, Guillaume must look measured, holy. His motive is control. If he appears uncertain, the king will replace him with someone harsher. Do you confess? A judge asks. Matthew's mind runs along the rules like fingers along a rosary. If he denies, they will take him back below and make a confession anyway. If he confesses, the wax witness will seal his lie into law. If he names the cash, he becomes unclaimed, and any legal protection vanishes like mist. If he stays silent, the court will call silence proof of guilt. He speaks carefully. I confess that I am in your hands, he says, voice steady enough to surprise himself. I confess that pain makes words. A ripple of anger moves through the clerics. They want a clean sentence, not a mirror. The judge orders him removed. Outside, Father Pierre tells the crowd that justice is being done. He watches faces, searching for signs of doubt, and forces his own doubt down like a swallowed stone. Across the hall, a royal official counts confiscated items in a ledger, scratching notes as if writing can make property rightful. The ledger curse hangs in the air. What is written becomes movable. That night, in the prison corridor, a notice is posted: fresh parchment, new wax. A papal commission is coming. Cardinals will review procedures. Witnesses will be summoned. Guillaume reads the notice and feels his jaw tighten. Oversight is a threat to any machine. In Avignon, Clement's men are already riding north, and by the time they arrive, every seal in Paris will need to look perfect. The papal commission enters Paris like a change in weather. Horses with travel foam on their flanks are led through the gates. Red hats appear beneath gray skies. Servants carry chests that smell of cedar and wax, filled with documents that expect to be obeyed. As they pass, the city's bell towers answer with a slow toll, and the sound seems to press the cold deeper into bones. Cardinal Nicolas arrives at the prison hall with a thin smile and tired eyes. His robe is heavy, and it holds the city's damp like a sponge. His motive is authority. If he allows the king's machinery to run unchecked, the church becomes a stamp, not a judge. Yet if he pushes too hard, France may stop listening to Rome entirely. So he speaks in careful phrases, as if balancing a cup of water while walking on ice. Guillaume greets the commission with polished humility. He offers chairs, offers bread, offers stacks of confessions sealed and ready. He wants the cardinals to see order, not cruelty. His motive is self-preservation. If Rome declares procedures improper, Guillaume's career, and perhaps his skin, will be forfeit. Isabeau is assigned to copy proceedings for the commission. The ink in her pot has thickened from cold. When she stirs it, it smells sharp, almost sour. A servant lays fresh parchment before her, and the fibers catch slightly on her fingertip, rough, like a tongue. She writes while the cardinals question witnesses, while guards stand stiff, while prisoners are brought in like inventory. Matthew is summoned again, this time to speak before men who might listen. His ankles are chained. Each step makes iron rings clatter against stone. He can smell incense from the chapel mingled with the stink of the corridor, and the mixture makes his head ache. Cardinal Nicolas asks, "Were your confessions taken freely?" Matthew's throat tightens. He thinks of the oath of silence. He thinks of becoming unclaimed. He does not speak of caches. He speaks of procedure. Pain was used, he says, voice hoarse. Confessions were sealed. He looks at the cardinal and adds, "The wax witness makes ink heavier than flesh." For a moment, the hall feels still. Isabeau's pen pauses. A droplet of ink falls and spreads on the page like a bruise. Nicolas orders records examined. He asks for dates, for names of witnesses, for proof that the confession loop was honored. A clerk from the king's office produces ledgers with crisp entries: property seized, cells assigned, interrogations scheduled. The ledger curse has been inverted. The king writes, therefore the king owns. Nicola's mouth tightens. He knows writing can be forged by fear. In the back of the hall, a royal official watches Nicolas closely. His motive is loyalty purchased by proximity. If he can report that the commission is soft, he will be rewarded. If he reports that the commission might undermine the king, he will be ordered to act. He rubs his fingers together, feeling the grit of dried wax left from handling seals, and makes his decision in silence. That evening, Nicolas drafts a letter to Avignon recommending restraint, proper hearings, and protection of witnesses. Arnaud's hand in Avignon will read it later, perhaps, and sigh. Isabeau watches the letter being folded. She watches wax melted, poured, pressed. She understands too well. Once a seal is set, it demands obedience. Before dawn, the letter is gone. Not stolen loudly, but redirected. A courier is stopped at a checkpoint by men who claim to be verifying seals. They break the wax witness out of sight of the commission and replace it with another. When Nicolas wakes and asks for confirmation that his words are traveling, he receives only polite answers and empty hands. In the corridor below, Guillaume hears the news and allows himself one private breath of relief, tasting candle smoke and cold metal again. Tomorrow, the king's agents will present a corrected record, and the commission will be forced to argue with wax instead of truth. Once the story is written, it must be acted out in the streets. The king's agents spread through Paris like ink spilled on cloth, finding corners, soaking in. They searched cellars, chapels, stables, and counting rooms, asking the same question in different voices. Where did the treasure go? At the docks, the same smells of fish, wet rope, and tar. River mist clings to male shirts and makes every torch haloed. Boats bump softly against the pilings with a hollow wooden knock, and the sound echoes under the bridges like a slow drum. A barge captain named Thibaut stands with his hands on a damp coil of rope, watching royal men inspect crates. His motive is debt. He owes a banker for a winter of bad trade. If he cannot pay, his boat will be seized, and his family will sleep under a roof that is not theirs. So when an official offers him coin for information, Templar chests, secret shipments, night departures, Thibaut nods, even though he does not know what he is agreeing to yet. The officials carry lists. They check seals. They consult ledgers. The ledger curse is everywhere now, twisted into a net. If it is not written, it does not belong. If it is written, it can be moved. A clerk's nails are stained black with ink and wax. He licks his thumb to turn pages, and the taste makes him grimace. He does not notice the small cruelty of it, how paper becomes more important than breath. Thibaut remembers a night months ago when a hooded man paid him to take a small chest upriver, no questions asked. The chest was heavy, and the wood smelled of cedar. Thibaut had kept his mouth shut because silence is a sailor's best tool. Now, under the gaze of the king's men, he realizes silence can be sold, and he is the one selling it. He tells them about the chest, careful not to add flourishes. He gives them a date, a bend in the river, a warehouse with a cracked lion carved above the door. That warehouse is raided before dusk. Men pry at boards with iron crowbars, splinters fly, old dust erupts and makes them cough. They find sacks of grain, barrels of wine, a nest of rats, and finally, behind a false wall, a cedar chest bound in iron. The iron is cold under their hands. The lock is new, almost gleaming. Someone wanted this to look untouched. In the prison, Matthew hears the rumor carried by a guard who cannot keep it to himself. They found a chest, the guard says, half proud, half afraid. Guillaume hears it too and feels a flicker of satisfaction. Proof can be staged or genuine. Either way, it serves. Isabeau hears it and feels dread, because treasure hunts do not end cleanly. They end when someone is punished enough to satisfy the crowd. Thibaut is ordered to stand as witness. He is brought to the warehouse and made to watch as the seal is examined. Wax is melted for the official seal, red, glossy, smelling of resin and smoke. The wax witness will sanctify the opening. Thibaut's stomach twists. He wants the coin, yes, but he also wants to not be the man who helped unleash whatever this is. There is no way to be half guilty in a court that loves simple stories. The seal is pressed. Witnesses nod. A knife slides under the wax. The snap is sharp. They lift the lid. Inside is not gold, not relics, not the secret heart of an order. Inside is a single folded sheet of parchment and a small pouch of ash. The parchment is blank. The ash smells faintly of burnt herbs, and when a clerk dips a finger in, it leaves a gray stain like mourning. For a moment, no one speaks, because an empty chest is a kind of insult. Then the officials begin to talk over one another, staging, trickery, hidden compartments, more searches, more arrests. Thibaut steps back, fingers wet with river mist, and realizes the trap has tightened. An empty chest does not end a hunt. It makes the hunters angry. That night, Guillaume orders the interrogations resumed with renewed urgency, and the next warrant is drafted while the river keeps moving, indifferent too. In Avignon, the decision is made with ink, not fire. A bull is drafted, thick parchment, wide margins, the kind of document meant to outlive the men it names. In the palace scriptorium, the air is close and smells of warmed wax and scraped vellum. Scribes bend over desks, shoulders hunched, copying the same lines again and again until the words feel like grooves in stone. Sand is shaken over wet ink, and the grains glitter like frost before they are blown away. Father Arnaud reads the final draft aloud to Pope Clement. The Latin rolls through the room like slow water. Dissolve the order. Transfer its goods. Silence its name. Clement's motive is still the same weary balance. Keep France within the church. Keep the church from appearing weak. Keep his own soul from collapsing under compromise. He tells himself this is not condemnation, only suppression for the sake of peace. Peace, here, is another word for obedience. When Clement takes the seal matrix in his hand, it is heavier than it looks. Cool metal warms against his palm. He presses it into molten wax, and the wax rises around the edges, glossy and red. The smell is resinous, almost sweet, and it makes Arnaud's stomach turn. The wax witness of the papacy is absolute. Once this seal hardens, the world must rearrange itself around it. North in Paris, Jacques de Molay, the Grand Master, waits in a cell that smells of damp straw and old prayers. His beard has grown gray. His hands are swollen from chains. Yet his eyes remain clear in a way that makes guards look away. His motive is not pride for pride's sake. It is the practical fear that if he admits to lies, the rule itself becomes a joke, and every vow in Christendom becomes negotiable under pain. He cannot allow that precedent, even if it would buy him comfort. Guillaume visits him with quiet formality. He offers a prepared confession, already written, already folded. All de Molay must do is agree, and the seal will be made. Guillaume's motive is completion. A Grand Master's confession would close the story like a clasp. It would justify the seizures, calm the church, silence doubters. He leans close enough that de Molay can smell the faint smoke in his hair. De Molay does not touch the paper. He speaks instead of rules. The rule binds us, he says, voice low. Not because we are strong, but because we are weak. He glances at the confession sheet and adds, your wax cannot make a lie holy. A guard shifts, chain links rasping, uncomfortable with a man who refuses the offered exit. Outside the prison, the king's officials begin the inventory of dissolved goods. They open chests, count coins, measure land deeds. They write entries fast. The ledger curse, inverted again. If the court writes it, the court can move it. Templar horses are led away to new stables. Templar cloaks are sold for wool. Even the temple's keys are recut, as if metal can forget who held it. When the papal bull arrives in Paris, it comes sealed and carried under guard. Cardinal Nicola is forced to read it aloud in council. The seal is displayed. No one dares call it false. The order is undone on paper first, then in the world. Isabeau listens and feels cold move through her, as if the bull has opened a window to winter. That evening, de Molay is brought briefly into a hall and told that the order is ended. He closes his eyes, not in defeat, but in calculation. An oath can be broken by pain. An order can be broken by paper. But a public lie can also be broken, if a man chooses the right moment to speak. Guillaume receives the final schedule at midnight. Executions set, locations chosen, witnesses summoned. He smooths the parchment flat with his palm, feeling the fibers rough under skin. Outside, a wind rattles shutters, and somewhere a church bell rings a single note. In a month's time now, on a small island in the Seine, a stake will be built, and the Grand Master will be asked to speak one last sentence before the wax of history cools. The day of execution arrives with clean cold. Paris wakes to a pale sky and a wind that cuts along the river like a knife. On the isle in the Seine, men have built a platform of rough timber, and the wood smells fresh where it has been split. Pitch is smeared at the base. It shines dark, sticky, hungry. A stake stands at the center, waiting like a thin tree. Crowds gather again. Some come for justice. Some come for entertainment. Some come because the city's fear has told them that watching is a kind of safety. The air is thick with the smell of damp wool and breath, and above it all rides the sharp bite of smoke from torches. A drummer tests his sticks. The sound is dull, like a heart behind cloth. Jacques de Molay is led out, chains clinking, feet dragging. His face is gray with fatigue, but his posture is straight. Beside him walk other condemned men, eyes fixed on the ground as if looking for a crack to crawl into. Matthew is not brought to the stake. He remains in a cell, listening to the distant roar of the crowd carried by wind through the prison slit. He tastes the smoke anyway, because smoke finds its way everywhere. The executioner, a man called Martin, checks the ropes with professional care. The hemp is rough. It bites his fingers. He rubs them together to shake off the sting. His motive is survival through craft. If he botches the job, the crowd will turn, and the court will blame him for disorder. If he does it well, he will be paid and left alone. He tells himself he is a tool, not a judge, because a tool does not have to dream. A clerk steps forward with a confession sheet, sealed, ready to be broken. Guillaume stands near the platform, hands clasped, face calm. He wants the final image to be neat. Heretics punished, order restored, story complete. He signals for the wax witness. The seal is snapped. The confession is read aloud, words carried over the river. De Molay listens, and something in his expression changes, not rage, but a quiet narrowing, like a man choosing a door. When asked to affirm the confession, De Molay speaks instead with a voice that carries. I am not guilty of the crimes they say, he says, and the sentence lands like a stone in water. The crowd stirs. Guillaume's jaw tightens. Rules do not like public contradictions. De Molay continues, careful, not naming caches, not naming marks, not breaking the oath of silence about treasure. He breaks a different oath, the one the court tried to force onto parchment. He calls the confessions lies taken by pain. He calls the process corrupted. And then, in a final act of procedural magic, he places a curse not as poetry but as a summons, that those who twisted justice will answer soon before God. His words are plain, almost administrative, and that is what makes them frightening. The crowd goes quiet enough to hear the river slap the pilings. Martin lights the pyre. Flame catches the pitch with a sudden hungry whoosh. Heat rises. Smoke thickens, gray and oily, clawing at throats. De Molay's hair singes. The smell of burning wool and flesh is immediate and unforgettable, and some in the crowd turn away, gagging. Others stare harder, as if trying to store the image like a relic. In the prison, Matthew grips the ledger pouch under his shirt until the wax seal warms and softens. He thinks of all the rules that have held men, vows, seals, deadlines. He thinks of what survives after fire. Above the river, ash begins to drift like dark snow. That night, a messenger runs from the island to the palace with a report written in haste. Guillaume reads it by candlelight, and for the first time his calm fractures into a tight worry. A public denial will not stop the machine, but it will scratch it. In the chancery, Isabeau copies the report onto a fresh sheet and watches the ink soak in. She presses a new seal and feels sick as the wax cools. Somewhere in Avignon, another letter is being drafted and another seal is being warmed. In a quiet archive room, a clerk opens a drawer and makes space for one more file, because tomorrow the record must be tidied. After the fire, the city tries to return to routine. Bread is baked. Carts roll. The Seine keeps carrying its slow, cold water. But something has shifted in the way people speak. In taverns, voices drop when someone says Templar. In churches, prayers sound thinner, as if everyone is listening for an answer that does not come. The temple's rooms are emptied. Walls that once echoed with boots and prayer now echo with strangers' footsteps and the slap of measuring tapes. Royal officials pace through chambers with lists in hand, counting objects like rosary beads. A silver cup is written down, therefore it is owned. A horse is written down, therefore it is moved. The ledger curse has become the crown's habit. If it is entered, it is taken. Captain Hughes receives a small reward. Coin, a nod, the right to stand closer to important doors. His wife's cough does not stop. His son's shoes still pinch. His motive, when he looks at the reward, is not joy but exhaustion. He obeyed, and the world did not become kinder. At night, he hears the snap of wax in his dreams and wakes with his mouth tasting of iron. In the prison, Matthew is not executed. He is transferred, quietly, to a smaller cell where no one asks him questions for a time. Silence can be punishment, too. A priest brings him thin soup that smells of turnip. Margot slips him an extra crust when she can, because her motive is still the street's calm, and a man starving in a cell is a spark that might light trouble. Matthew eats slowly, listening to the scrape of rats behind the wall. Isabeau is kept busy. Confessions must be copied, inventories finalized, correspondence answered. Her fingers are permanently stained now. Ink has become part of her skin. Sometimes she pauses over a phrase and feels the old nausea. How easily words can be made to weigh more than bodies. Her motive is not heroism. It is the stubborn desire to stay human inside a machine. One night, weeks after the execution, Isabeau is summoned to the archive room of the Chancery. The room is cold. Dust floats in the candlelight like pale insects. Shelves smell of old leather and dried glue. A clerk hands her a thin packet tied with ribbon and sealed, unbroken. Special handling, he says, eyes avoiding hers. Do not copy. Do not read. File it. The seal is plain, without a name. That makes it more frightening. A wax witness waiting in the dark. Isabeau carries the packet as if it is glass. Her hands sweat around it. The wax stays firm, cool, indifferent. In her mind, she hears Matthew's whisper, "Do not repeat what you see." She thinks of the oath of silence and the penalty of being unclaimed. And she thinks of another kind of unclaimed, people erased by paperwork, by silence, by convenient stories. In the archive, she slides open a drawer. The wood groans softly. Inside are bundles of parchment tied like bones. She lays the sealed packet among them and feels, strangely, as if she is placing a sleeping animal into a cage. Before she closes the drawer, she notices something. A faint smear of gray on the ribbon, as if someone's ash-dirty finger touched it. A reminder of fire. A reminder that even sealed things have traveled through hands. Isabeau hesitates. Her motive, in this final moment, is a small rebellion made of curiosity and conscience. If she breaks the seal, she becomes a witness, and the truth inside becomes binding. If she leaves it, the truth stays trapped, and the machine stays smooth. She closes the drawer. The wood clicks shut. In the quiet, the palace seems to hold its breath. Far away, rumors continue, of treasure that vanished, of a ledger that cannot be spoken, of brothers who carried secrets out under their shirts while chains clinked. Maybe some of those rumors are true. Maybe the Real treasure was always the record itself. Who gets to write it? Who gets to seal it? Who gets to open it? A footstep sounds in the corridor outside the archive, slow, deliberate. A key turns, and someone, very gently, begins to slide the drawer open again.